Yes, thanks for staying with us on the Sports Show. Time to talk about the SANFL, of course. Sunday, long weekend, grand final, Glenelg up against the Eagles. But as always, Luke Marchiaro, the expert in the SANFL, joins us. Luke, thanks for your time, mate.
Thanks, guys. Thanks for having me.
Hey, mate, let's talk about the Magarey medal first. A try, of course, Bryce Gibbs ties it up with James Cheetahs.
Yep.
Were you surprised that it was a tie?
I think both those guys had really good years. They were probably in the best handful of players in the competition. It was a really close count, and probably thought that Gibbs would have a couple more votes given he had less competition from his teammates. James Cheetahs had Jack Hayes finish right behind him in third.
20 votes.
The Glenelg guys as well were right behind him in fourth and fifth. So it was a very close count, and probably the best two players in the competition were rewarded in the end.
Yeah, was it because Gibbs had those 15 games, so he missed a couple of games through injury? Was that just enough? I mean, Cheetahs is definitely deserving, but we don't. I think the last tie was, 79, was it? Something like that?
Yeah, six. I think
I actually had it down.
2012.
I've got it down somewhere.
Symes and I can't remember the other one. Yeah, 2012 I think it was.
Cheetahs is the first winner for Woodville West Torrens. Of course, they came in 91. No one from Woodville West Torrens has won a Magarey. There's been others with Woodville, of course, Malcolm Blight, and before that. But he's the first winner for the Woodville West Torrens Footy Club.
Wow, that's an interesting
one. A bit of a surprise given how successful they've been over a long period of time. So it was a really good count. There was probably a few guys that were pushing their claims towards the end of the year. Matty Nunn at Norwood got hurt, missed the last couple of games. He was in the top few, and as with Luke Partington as well, missed the last round. He was only 3 votes off the lead. So shows the depth in the competition and the quality of players that were on offer this year.
He could find himself a bit stiff, the Woodville West Torrens guy, because Jack Hayes was there. With 20 votes. So he's done really well, I reckon.
He had
the Eagles
of his 20 votes, 6 of those were best on ground. So he got the 3 votes in 6 games, and he had an incredible year. And I think it was nice to see him get rewarded a big key forward, and opposite to the Brownlow where it's all midfielders. See a few big forwards get some opportunities. It's really good to see.
That was my first thought when I saw his name there. 20 votes. I thought, wow. Now there's a guy who's not running around the middle of the ground getting a heap of the footy. But he takes a lot of marks, doesn't he? He's a big, strong...
He does, and with his size and his strength, it is pretty eye-catching when you're watching him out on the ground.
He's the danger on the weekend, I think.
All right, let's talk about the weekend, because you brought it up. Of course, long weekend, an unusual one. Sunday, 3 o'clock at Adelaide Oval. Should be a ripping crowd come in. Looks like the weather's going to be okay for it. Before we get on to that game, South Adelaide, of course, up against Glenelg last week. The Panthers had some good opportunities to win it.
They had a real crack, and they've been one of those teams all year. They've been in real games and had all the pressure early in the last quarter and kicked, I think, 7 straight behinds to start the last quarter. So just wasted a few opportunities. They dominated through the midfield, even with Bryce Gibbs being a quiet game. They were probably plus 13 in clearances, and just Glenelg's pressure in the end, I think, ended up taking their toll, and they didn't get those clean entries going inside 50 that they probably would have liked.
So 11-11 to 6-13. It's unusual to say South had their chances when you look at the final score, but it really wasn't until late in the last quarter where it was out of reach for the Panthers.
It was 15 points halfway through the last quarter, and Jason Horne-Francis hit the post twice, and they missed a couple of opportunities, and Glenelg kicked a couple of goals late with South trying to take the game on. But it's probably a few question marks for Glenelg with their midfield. I mean, they were beaten in the clearances the last couple of weeks, and leaves them with a few question marks heading into this weekend's game.
I want to get onto that, but just before we do, Jay Cross, of course, played his 208th and last final game in the SANFL. He's been a terrific servant, not just for the Panthers, but for the SANFL, hasn't he?
He's been fantastic. I mean, 2 Magarey medals, 200 games, and to keep a player of that quality in the competition for such a long period of time is a real testament to him and what South Adelaide have done. And he's really been South Adelaide for the last 10 years. Got him through some difficult times and got him in a position where they're competing in finals, and they're pushing a lot of players through to that next level at the AFL level too. So he's had a big part in that, and he's going to be sorely missed from there next year. All
right, let's talk about Glenelg and the Eagles. Of course, we know the Eagles got him a couple of weeks ago. What's changed? What's the key component coming into this game for Glenelg to get over the top of the Eagles?
Well, Luke Partington's back in, and he's always a difference maker in that midfield. He was a bit quieter last week, just finding his feet, but I think he can definitely be the difference in the game between the two sides through the midfield. That bigger body that can hit the scoreboard. It's probably something that the Eagles don't have as much of, and I think Luke Partington could be a real difference maker for them in terms of what the two seeds were missing last time they played.
Did the Mays get through unscathed?
I think so. I think they'll have a couple coming back. They had Chandler missed with concussion the week before as well. They'll have a bit of selection pressure as well. So their reserves are in the grand final too. So they've had a good hit out, I think, last weekend, and they'll have a few blokes pushing for spots this weekend.
That's a bonus, isn't it? Having your reserves
and the
coming
Eagles
with you. You're all training together. Everyone's No, I reckon that's a bonus.
And the Eagles are in the same boat. Their team lost the preliminary final to Centrals last week in the reserve. So got two teams that are basically at full strength, and they're probably the two best teams in the competition, not only this year but over the last 3 seasons as well.
So we've talked about what the Eagles might need to do. Well, they're able to get the win. What do you reckon? Are they going to change their game plan too much, you think, coming in to Sunday's game, or they'll stay with the same formula they had, which was the winning formula?
They've had a winning formula. They know how to win finals. They won the premiership last year, and they're just very consistent. And they've got so many X-factor players. You know, we saw it in that semi-final. They got 10 goals out of the Menzel brothers and Tyson Stengel. They've got guys that can hit the scoreboard. They've got impact players, and I think if they do what they do really well and they can intercept mark and get opportunities off half-back through their runners like Tumpus and Sinor and Pudney and give these forwards opportunities, I think they can cause Glenelg a few headaches, especially if the weather is a bit inclement like it's looking like it may be.
Mate, we saw two teams in the AFL last weekend, the Bulldogs and Melbourne, both with that up-tempo, fast-running style of game, and it looked early in the last quarter that the Bulldogs were going to get it, and then Melbourne just exploded on them. Could we see similar in this game, do you think?
I think it's going to be an interesting game in terms of Glenelg has got a big forward line, and if the weather's a bit inclement and all of a sudden they've got McBean and Reynolds and Allen and it's a bit wet and the ball's on the ground, it probably suits the Eagles more than it will Glenelg. So I think the Eagles will try and take the pace on. They'll kick more. They'll try and play on, use those 45 kicks, those intercept kicks, and get away with the footy. And I think Glenelg will try and win the ball through, rebound as well. But I don't think it'll be as much of a stoppage-dominated scoring game like we saw in the AFL.
Which team do you reckon's got the better two-tempo? Can go slow and can go fast? Which one do you think has the better?
I think Glenelg have shown it over the year. They've been able to win from big margins back and have been able to hold off teams that have challenged them as well. So they've been the best team all year for a reason, and I think they'll back their game style in. But the Eagles have proven as well. I mean, the second quarter of last year's grand final, I think they kicked 9-0 against North and buried them in that game. So they've got that ability to go to another gear as well, and I think both teams will really fancy themselves coming into this weekend.
Is your forecast a bit dodgy, is it, on the weekend?
There's a bit of rain around by the sounds of it, so late Sunday afternoon. So whether it, hopefully it holds off and we get a good spectacle, but I think the rain probably helps the Eagles a little bit in terms of the Glenelg have got those tall forwards, and if the ball gets to the ground, those Eagles smalls can be really dangerous.
Yeah. Limited numbers. We saw the tickets go on sale early in the week and they were snapped up pretty quick. The first 10,000 went in a day.
Yeah.
What are you expecting? 26, 27,000?
Hopefully
That's what they're allowed, I think. 26.
Hopefully we can get that 26,000. The Eagles they've got a really loyal following, but it's not as big a following as probably what the Bays do. So I'd expect a pretty Bays heavy crowd if it does get close to 25 or 26,000, and the weather stays good and we get a good spectacle on Sunday afternoon.
All right, put your hat on, mate. Put the crystal ball in front of you. What's it going to be?
I picked the Eagles a couple of weeks ago, but I think the Bays will come out in a very, very close game. I think it'll be under 10 points either way. And I like Darcy Bailey as a bit of an X factor for the Jack Odie medal on Sunday afternoon as well.
Babs, what are you thinking?
I'm thinking Eagles.
You're going the Eagles? All right, okay. All right, I think it's going to be the Bays. I think they've just been the form team all year. Although it's hard to pick it because we know the Eagles are so good in the finals, but I just sense that the Bays have got a belief. Sometimes you've got to have that belief that you can win it.
Yeah.
And I think they've got that. And I think if they get going, they'll be too hard to shut them down.
And despite the Eagles winning last week, there's a lot of history that goes against them. The teams that have won that second semi have lost the last 6 grand finals. And beating the same team 2 times in a row is also very difficult as well. So, Glenelg are just building, and I think that they'll really fancy themselves on Sunday.
Just quickly, because we've got to wrap it up, mate. We said the midfield was pretty quiet, yet the Bays were able to get a win. But you said before we came on air, the tackling by the Bays was dominant in that game. That going to be a key feature in this game against the Eagles?
I think it's going to be a high-pressure game. Glenelg laid 100 tackles last week against South Adelaide, and if they can do that this weekend, I think they're going to be really hard to beat. Don't get that clean entry into your forward line, and it does put pressure on makes it easy for your defenders. So I think Glenelg will be a key for victory.
All right, we've got Luke will be back next week. We'll be asking you for the lotto numbers, mate, or saying you were no good on your prediction. So I'm confident with you, mate. I think the Bays are going to get up and about. Stay with us. Still, a bit more to come on the show.